Chris.
Yes, Spencer.
I'm tired of seeing man movies and bad movies. Now, let's go to the past. Woohoo!
Hi, love.
Hello, Katrina. I have something to say.
What's happened?
I'm not coming home.
We liked it.
Yeah.
It was good. It was interesting. My first viewing, I wasn't really sure about it because I was thinking to myself, oh, gimmick.
Okay, we got Tom Hardy in a car. That's it. Tom Hardy plays this concrete construction worker guy. So he's like in charge of making sure it's the right concrete for the right building and that sort of thing. At the same time that he's getting ready for this big project, his mistress, who's been pregnant for a few months, is giving birth. He hasn't told his wife that he's done this yet, but he feels a responsibility towards making it right, which I thought was very well portrayed. They show he has conflicts with his upbringing and his father, how apparently his father fathered him in this way, or at least fathered other kids in this way. We slowly get to know his character through the conversations he has with all these different people. And we see his demeanor change depending on who he's talking to. He tries to maintain the most calm, like collected demeanor. He's always trying to keep a level head. But you see these outbursts, like as soon as he hangs up certain calls, he's like,
yeah, it's interesting because when you first see him, you see him like look into his rearview mirror and there's no one back there, but he's talking to someone. Figuratively, he was kind of like facing his past.
Yeah.
It's behind him.
Yeah.
And it's sprinkled throughout the entire film, which I really enjoyed.
and it shows how much you can do with a limited feature set.
Yes.
You know, with just that, you can make an emotionally gripping, compelling story.
It shows that all you need is compelling characters.
Yeah.
And for this, I didn't really get extreme highs, extreme lows, but what I got was an experience that I haven't experienced before in a film. And I find that to be a compelling, successful film. It's something that has challenged me in the way that I view media. So that's why I was rewatching it. I got a lot more out of it because now you really know what's going on from the beginning.
Right, because it's cryptic at first.
It's very cryptic. And so what they do with it is you see Tom Hardy in his car and then he's about to turn left and then you see this giant truck pull up behind him and then the light turns green and he just stays there. And then you're wondering, why isn't he going? And the car behind him, honk, honk. And then he puts on the right blinker. He says, screw it. And then the camera zooms in onto that right blinker. And you're like, that's a big deal. For some reason, I don't know what it is, but he's turning right. And then he goes. And it's subtle, but it's so good.
We are facing $100 million worth of losses.
Listen, I will take care of it. I'm trying to do the right thing.
Depending on who he calls, different things are happening. Like he calls his wife, and you hear the kids in the background, TV's on in the background. You hear his boss, and then he's up at headquarters, you hear papers ruffling and things like that. So it's really interesting because the sound adds so much to your imagination so that you can figure out what's going on. And in the world of cinema, that is the goal, is to try to get you to kind of fill in your own spaces. Like, have your imagination fill in the tiny gaps of what isn't there so that you can try to think about, oh, that's how I view it. It's kind of like reading a book.
Yeah, I hear that.
I feel like that's when the audience's participation comes in. Is we all have been in a car handling bad phone calls, and everyone can relate to that. And it's interesting because now you get to see what happens when someone is off of the phone.
It's a very interesting character study.
Yes.
I was able to experience his feelings the whole way through, like the horror of trying to talk to your wife, telling her that you cheated on her. How, like, he's trying to present it in a loving way that's minimizing the horrible thing he did.
Yes, yeah, just like when he was saying, when he breaks the news to her and says, honey, I want to try to come up with the next practical step. You know, he was trying, and he never gets necessarily angry at anybody. He calls his coworker, and he knows his coworker gets drunk all the time. And he says to him, now, my friend, how many beers have you had? And then his friend gets so angry, and he just starts screaming at him, and it says, you've done this to me, blah, blah, blah. And then Tom Hardy just says, so you have been drinking cider. It shows you how you don't have to have giant explosions in a movie. You don't have to have epic fights or anything like that. All you need is imagination from the audience and a good character to latch onto in the beginning. And I think that they succeeded in that. And the cinematography is gorgeous. You get the cars moving forward, but then the camera's going in, camera's going out, and it's interesting. And then they overlay like 3 different things. So you get the lights, you get Tom Hardy, you get this, you get that. So it's interesting from a filmmaking experience.
Yeah. I thought there were some interesting thematic touches as well. For instance, as he's driving and you're learning more about him and his struggles, police cars and emergency vehicles like speed by him with like the sirens blaring. But he's like, oh, I'm going to speed limit. This is how I'm supposed to do it. This is the right thing to do. So it's like everything inside him is like screaming.
Yes.
He's feeling like those sirens screaming by, just pedal to the metal, but he's not. He's controlling it. He's fixing it. At least that's from his perspective. Partly fueled by the baggage of his father, who wronged him in a similar way, like either abandoned a kid or abandoned him, maybe.
Right, and that's the only time that you ever see Tom Hardy get angry, other than like one other time, is that he's angry at his past, he's angry at himself, and he's trying to do the right thing. And that's what really makes you want to be on this journey with him. Yeah, and I think that there were some subtle moments too where he's driving forward and it just shows his face, but then you have this overlay. It shows the highway, but it's going backwards. So he's going forward, but it's going backwards.
Yeah, I noticed that.
And I think that was showing about how he could just turn around, or how the future is holding him back a little bit, or his past is holding him back.
Yeah, I got that feeling.
Yeah.
There's so much about it that makes you feel like he wants to not be there. And also when they have like the baby's head, middle of the cord, it's like a noose, and I could tell he's feeling, what if the baby dies? Like, would I want this? And it's kind of horrified that he might want this, but he doesn't say that. But that's
it's communicated.
Yeah,
and also the fact that he's doing all of this just for that person, and he's sacrificing his entire life and everything for it. And it's just kind of like letting your baggage go and just trying to do the right thing. But then when he gets to the new part of his life, there's a little bit of a horizon there, right? A tiny bit.
Just in the piece, I think that he believes he's doing the right thing. But there's like doubt in there too, like
I felt that too, because I didn't know how the film really wanted me to feel about him, because when the wife is talking to him, she's saying, you only care about your job, you're only doing this, but then you have this juxtaposition where he calls the people up and they say, oh, you're fired from your job, and he says, that's fine, but I'll be on the phone with you guys tomorrow morning so that we can get the job done.
Yeah.
And so it was interesting, because now it seems like that he's not doing it for the money, he's just doing it because he wants to try to do the right thing. And his friend even says, this doesn't sound like you. You would never sleep with someone, cheat on your wife. And he says, I know it doesn't sound like me, that's why I have to make things right.
I felt everything in the movie fit. I think everything that was there served a purpose. Every call, every discussion he had with somebody, there wasn't anything that was extra or just felt like it didn't serve the purposes of the story. And I really appreciate that. So I thought it was well written, it was tight, and I could see how on first viewing, especially at the beginning, might be like, well, where's this going? Like, so if you got that feeling from the beginning, I could see people feeling that way maybe. I was intrigued by the unknown. So he's on the phone and so I'm like, yes, this is Locke. And then they're like, you can't be serious. You can't be serious. Yeah. And he's like, yes, this is going to happen. No,
I was intrigued about that direction, about how he was just being reserved and such. But I don't know if that would be necessarily acting and more of the story itself. Because, okay, now in this part you're actually calm and such. Like, okay.
To me, it was a determined demeanor, but it was like, I could see there was more going on underneath it.
Okay.
And that, so I found that intriguing. If it was just, oh yeah, I'm just gonna call some people. Hey, yeah, we're calling. Yeah, it's not a big deal. Yeah. I didn't really get that.
I got a little bit of that about how he was being stern and he's saying, okay, this is the way that it has to be. This is what I'm doing and such. But I don't know. I didn't get as much of just he was trying to hide in. I feel like maybe get a close up of his hands, like gripping the steering wheel or something like that, and saying that. But also seeing it in the physicality of his performance. You know, his hands, his feet, things like that. But overall, like that's not to harp on him. It's just something that like I noticed.
I hear what you're saying. So for you, having him display more signs of that inner turmoil earlier on would be more effective for you?
Well, I think just in like little parts, because obviously you can tell that he's
things get worse and worse, and his emotions come out more and more.
Right. Yeah. Like you start seeing him crack as the film goes on. So yeah. But overall, I would highly suggest the film. I think that people are going to watch this on Netflix, and it's going to tingle a part of their brain that most films don't tingle. And it's that's an imagination? What's that? Like, it's
actually asking something of the audience. You have to engage. You have to be a part of it.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. And not a lot of films do that. And so that's what I admire. I admire the creativity of this film, the imagination that it asks the audience to be a part of. Yeah, I would just highly suggest, and also it's just interesting how it's rated R, but there's
There's nothing visual.
There's nothing visual in it, and that's one of the beauties of filmmaking.
Yeah.
And that's what more filmmakers need to do. So yeah, I would say I would highly suggest go see Locke.
Yeah, I would also highly recommend it. It's on Netflix, and it's only like 84 minutes long or something.
Yeah, it's a short film.
Yes, which I love. Like,
Yeah.
I love that. 90 minutes is a wonderful length for a movie, in my opinion, and yeah, it's definitely worth your time.
Yep, go see it. The middle camera isn't recording.